Hey guys, Adam from Equip to Endure. I finally got my hands on the Bear Grylls Ultimate Knife. Now this one's being made by Gerber. It's supposed to be designed by Bear Grylls, even though it's basically just a modification on the Prodigy, which is based off the LMF2 knife, which we're actually a big fan of from Gerber. So you guys know there's quite a bit of controversy behind this knife. We put out a video back, I want to say in October, maybe November, about some damage, about a failure of these knives, and people buying these knives were experienced in regards to the pommel breaking off during normal activity. Now, since then I've had several different people send me several different photographs. I've been told of situations of somebody's batoning with a knife and the pommel breaking their hand, when somebody's actually carving with a knife and the pommel breaking. Actually, we got a chance to talk to Mike May over at SHOT Show. I do have one question. I know that I don't know if it was an earlier model or a prototype. You guys had a little bit of problem with the loosening of the pommels.
Correct.
You guys were working on getting that squared away?
Yes, actually, like I said, that first wave sold out.
Yeah.
And there were a limited number of issues, but we definitely heard people loud and clear.
Yeah.
So we went back to the drawing board, and it was, like you said, it was a pommel issue, and it's being addressed.
Squared away?
Yep, squared away.
Good to go.
Anyone who's ever experienced any problems with the knife, Gerber stands behind everything with a lifetime warranty.
Awesome.
By all means, if there's been issues, we'll take care of it, make it right.
So we just got our hands on one. We actually were waiting for Gerber to send us one, but we hadn't got any information back from them yet. So we were actually out in Walmart yesterday, and we saw one for 50 bucks. So went ahead and bought it. The MSRP on this is 60. You know, they're at Dick's Sporting Goods, Walmart, Bellows, and stuff like that. So we did get one from Walmart. On a first inspection, is very, very similar feeling to a Prodigy or an LMF2. And I'm going to go over some of the features that come along with this knife you guys have seen before, and then we're going to get into a test, and then I'll go over all the specs and everything else on the final review of this knife after we're done. The sheath design is very similar to anything from the Prodigy or the LMF2 series. Serrations, you know, the handle's pretty ergonomic, got a good rubber feel. We do have this pommel, which was told by Mike was used to smash coconuts or whatever else you need to do. Also, one thing that actually is pretty cool is they have put a little burr on the spine right here to use a ferrocerium rod, and actually I haven't had a chance to use it yet, so we're going to go ahead and pull this ferrocerium rod out of the case. One thing I did is this lanyard that's on the ferrocerium rod was actually on the knife. I threw it on the ferro rod because just so I could secure it under the flap, and we'll go over that a little bit later. The lanyard wasn't really doing anything. It was too small to get your hands through, so I just went ahead and put it on this. So the first strike will probably wear off the coating, and then the second one we'll see how that's not bad. Pretty good spark in that. This is a thinner gauge ferro rod, but it's pretty decent. So as you can see behind me, we have some stuff for a fire. We'll get into that pretty soon. Of course, on the lanyard that came with the knife, there's a whistle. Whistle is actually a very important, yet sometimes overlooked item in a survival kit. Pretty decent volume. We'll go ahead and throw this back in here before we lose it. The case itself, the fire steel itself is retained by a little D-ring that you snap in there. It's a pressure hold, which isn't bad. I threw the lanyard on here too, so I could wrap it around this part. And when I secured the sheath, that way there's no way the fire steel could get out. I'll give you guys a closer look at that. That way, see, it's wrapped around the sheath. So, also on the flip side right here, there is a sharpening stone. I don't really want to get into it yet because I haven't used this knife. You want to test it out. Diamond stone, and it's as you can see, it's at a ramped angle. So when you hold this, you got your angle there pretty much, it's pretty squared away. Very simple construction with the nylon, Velcro. The retention strap for the knife is actually bungee. Then on the back, there's a couple of signaling bits of information. We'll go over that. And then the little survival guide, which I'm actually having trouble fitting it in there. So that's kind of sticking out. Now, one other thing I got to say right off the bat with the sheath is there's no real good belt loop here to throw this on your belt. It rides very high, and as you can see, this is just one belt, but we'll go over that a little bit later in the review section. We'll get into the knife as it is. So already some information I'm getting from some of my subscribers and my viewers who actually picked up the newer version of it. Now this is the second release. It was that it came pretty sharp, so we're gonna test that right now. So I don't have the best edge on mine. It might also be the paper though. Let me try some of the serrations here. Well, not getting the best edge on this one specifically, but oh well. So well, here we go. So the first thing we'll do is we'll do a chop test. I got a piece of 4x1. We'll get a couple 30 good whacks and see how well that does. So we'll be right back. So my goal here, of course, is to build a decent fire. So we've had a lot of fallen branches. Of course, as you guys can see, we had some really wet snow. So that's gonna give us a little bit of a challenge, but you know, that's okay. Get this stuff fleeced up a little bit so we have some space to work here. As you guys can hear, it's some pretty dry stuff, but of course the surface is wet, so I might have to do a little carving to get rid of some of those wet layers and get to the dry stuff in the center. It's been one of those years where a few days ago it was like 70, and then snowed again last night. Really slushy, soggy, wet snow too, so it's gonna be fun to get a fire started in this mess. All right, here we go. Let's give it 30 good whacks. Not bad, it's a little wide right there. But for chopping, for a knife that size, it's not bad at all. Got the job done. All right, so let's get into some batoning. So far, so good. Feels very solid. If you don't need to use your knife, don't. Severely damaged the serrations. It's almost like a plain edge right now. I'll get you some closer shots up a little bit later. Pommel still feels tight. I don't feel any issues with it thus far. All right, so we're getting a little cold right now. Let's get a fire started before we do anything else in the test. So the first thing we're gonna do is make some room over here, I got our piece of tin foil that we're going to use. Today we're going to use our fire fixing piece of fat wood and some wax impregnated jute twine. So we'll go ahead and use a knife here to get some decent scrapings of our fat wood, or I can smell the resin. So remember, fire needs 4 things. A lot of people just talk about 3 things. It needs an ignition source, oxygen, fuel, and heat. And the more heat you have, the easier whatever substance you're igniting is going to ignite. Everything burns, just depends on what temperature. Fat wood burns pretty hot. A couple shavings here to help us produce enough heat to get some of this wood at a temperature it's going to light well at. Now, I usually use this stuff pretty sparingly, but since it's so wet, I'm going to go with my initial burn to get some stuff done. Use a little bit more than normal. Jute twine is awesome fire tinder. It's one of my favorite. So we're going to fluff this up a little bit. Now, one thing about tinder, sometimes it's better to use a lot of tinder kindling and that fuel wood lit than to use a little bit at a time and fail, a little bit at a time and fail, because you might not be able to produce enough heat. So this is one of those situations where I probably should use a little bit more than I'm using. I'm going to get a big ball of it. But at the same time, this is a test. I'm not out really trying to get a fire started because my life depends on it. You know, I want to use my resources sparingly. This is going to be about a golf ball sized pile of tinder. Now, once we start digging into some of this wet wood, you know, I might have to readjust if the wood is too wet to use to ignite this fire. So like I said before, guys, your lips are very, very sensitive to moisture. So we're going to come in here and shave away some of this wet outer surface until I get some dry stuff. Damn. So the water only permeated about a few millimeters. I'm already feeling a little bit of dry stuff. Gotta watch out too, because my hand's a little bit damp, so I can transfer water that way as well. That's why I'm not really big on serrations. I'm not really cutting as much as I am just digging into it. Not uniform, so I use the belly a little bit more. Not as more of a push cut because I don't have as much room to slice. The knife isn't really sharp enough to do any good feather sticking or fuzz sticks, whatever you guys like to call them. Might be better suited in just batoning this into thinner stripes, thinner pieces of wood. Now, this could be very, very tedious, but hey. Some of these pieces I was lucky and they were standing upright. Still kind of damp though. Well, we'll give it a try. Okay. Then some of this dry stuff, well, it was dry. some of the stuff that's a little wet, lay it close proximity so it dries out a wee bit. Definitely producing a good amount of heat right now because the ground's turning into mud underneath me. So we were pretty successful in that endeavor. Throw back my trusty straw. Pommel still feels pretty tight. And the rubber grip is actually fairly comfortable. You know, I'm not a huge fan of jimping, but the jimping isn't that aggressive on the thumb ramp, so it's pretty good. I would like to, you know, one thing I like about these knives that I think that Gerber would do really well to do is actually throw a finger choil in there so you can choke up a little bit more. Maybe dial back this thumb ramp a little bit, but of course they want to keep the two holes there so you can attach this and make this a spear. Well, the knife looks still in pretty good shape, with the exception of the serrations, which I just destroyed. I mean, they're pretty much gone. This is the second knife like that I've seen. Our buddy Hinkley Poland took his out this weekend and had similar results with the serrations. Let's get our kit back up here. Forget our gloves. We'll leave them over here to dry next to the fire. Our trusty Captain Caveman baton. This is what was referred to as the shapeless pile. Not a necessarily effective nor efficient fire, but that's okay. Started as a teepee structure until I got some wood on there, then a log cabin. So the edge is taking quite a bit of wear. So what I want to do actually is test out the stone. The angled stone is kind of interesting. Might take a little bit to get used to. It's pretty good. Ooh, that's getting hot. I know what you guys are saying, like, gosh, Adam, that's a sloppy looking fire. Well, hey, it's just one of those days. Let's work on this edge a little bit more. It's a little bit better. Still just ripping now. Maybe it's the paper I'm using. Maybe that's the reason. Most likely it's the paper. It's a little bit better than before. I still need some work. But that's not bad. You know, I'm able to tighten up the edge relatively quick. I sharpened the belly pretty well. So tightening up the belly wasn't that bad. Zoom in from over here. Let's go to the serrations. You guys can see how they're pretty eaten up. Right there. All in all, in the test, I mean, it didn't come that factory sharp. I was able to tighten up a little bit on the edge with the stone. The stone wasn't a bad idea. This ramp is actually kind of interesting in regards to helping you set the angles. The serrations for the knife, I think, is a wash. It's just, I mean, that's like 2-inch section of blade, and this is like, one of the most important sections right here for mechanical advantage when you're doing any carving. So as far as being able to do any kind of bushcrafting type things or doing any kind of fine-tuned stuff, I'm not really happy with it. The handle and the ergonomics are not bad at all. I'm actually very, very fond of the way this feels in my hand. A little less meaty, not as much of a swell as the LMF2, kind of missed that, but it still feels pretty good. and even with gloves on I was able to get pretty good traction. I'm not seeing any damage on the pommel, so I mean I was batoning, you guys saw that, and so it looks like Gerber did in fact correct that issue, and there's no issue here on that one. Now this knife has been marketed as a full tang on some sites, and you know, as not a full tang. The knife blade does not go all the way to the pommel. It's not one piece of metal. There is a separation in here, so this is not a full tang knife. I think it might go the majority to about right here. So there's probably a good piece of metal inside here, but you know, as defined as what a full tang is, it does not go to the pommel of the knife. You know, I did like this thing at beginning, this burr right here for the fire starting, but I was not able to control it. There's a little bit, I don't know. There's just I've had the back of other knives, which I was able to throw the spark a little bit easier. It kept on feeling like the spark actually would flip upwards. Maybe that's just the way I'm using it, you know, my technique, and I need to adjust. There's a little bit of wear on the plastic piece that keeps this fire steel in here, and I've worn a good piece of the fire steel already for this one fire and testing it out. So I like to see how well that holds up. As for the whistle's pretty good, and we'll go over the other components with the full review. As far as the chop test, it wasn't a bad chopper at all. The carving test, a little bit difficult. This thing wasn't that sharp, as I said before, so it did pretty poorly on that. Batoning wasn't an issue. It actually did pretty well. I'm using some, you know, cherry. It's pretty cold outside, and there wasn't any really big challenging piece to baton through. A knife this small, you shouldn't really be batoning anything more than 3 to 4 inches in diameter anyway, as tested as the limit. Mostly you want to go 2, 2.5, maybe 3. You know, I didn't do bad on that one. We didn't do a bow drill carve out with this one. I don't really think that's important for this one. This one has a fire steel, so the fact that it comes with a fire steel, don't worry about much on the fire end. And we were able to successfully get our fire started with a little use of this knife, and so I was pretty happy with that. So in all, it wasn't bad. It did better than I had been led to believe through previous videos. I really would like to see a more stable, maybe not stable is the right word, a more rugged metal steel to use with this. I don't know exactly the exact steel it is. I think it's a 440A. It is a stainless steel, but if you're going to do a stainless steel, why even put this coating on it? You don't really need it. You could have an extra reflective surface. If you're going to showcase this as a survival knife, give me a reflective surface so I can use it to signaling. We didn't do a smash test with this, so maybe we will try to get some acorns or something and try to smash with the pommel. That's what it's made for. Maybe we'll have to come back at a later date or do a add-on.